Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul ukdeten min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuh. Inshallah we will continue with the 22nd word, second station, and 10th flash. Again, 22nd word, second station, 10th flash. We've been discussing several verses, so interpretation of the several verses from Quran, all regarding divine unity, how everything is in hand of one single creator. And so far we studied 9 flashes, and inshallah we will continue with the 10th. Before we start with the 10th flash, could anyone summarize us the overall scope of the discussion? All these 10 flashes, 9 flashes so far, or even the first station maybe? A quick summary. Yusuf, could you do that for us? We have a lot of new faces, new names here.
We were discussing how the interconnectedness of things, how within everything you could find that, within everything you could find, within one thing you could find everything, and from one thing you can make everything. This is what we were discussing. We were discussing how everything is very interconnected, that to make fruit from a tree, you would have to control the whole universe basically, and that we can't attribute the source of the fruit to the tree because the tree does not have the knowledge to create that fruit, to make it. It does not have the understanding or the power to do that. And it would be like a contradiction to imagine that it did have that, because like we said, it would have to have knowledge of the whole universe to be able to create that fruit. And the tree is part of that universe. So we need to find something that is not within the universe, that is the source. And we were discussing things like, I guess the 9th flash was how, 9th flash, I remember last week was a bit confusing because we were saying, what I understood from last week, I don't know if this is exactly what it was, but I understood what really stuck with me was we were saying how it's like you have a factory, a tree is a factory, and we see one tree, it's creating fruits. But then we have another factory somewhere across the world, it's also creating fruits, and these fruits, they are similar. They're very close to each other. They're probably almost the same actually, in terms of the qualities. And for these fruits, or like if we say that each tree is independent and an independent factory creating the fruit, then for this factory here to create that fruit and the factory there to create the same fruit, it's impossible if they were separate, independently working. Because they're all so similar. The creation is so similar in various places. It's impossible for independent things to replicate it. So we need to attribute it to one source. And that's like the only logical conclusion. That's what I remember from last week.
So, as Abdul Rahman said, like the way I remember also, we've been discussing the signs or stamps of divine unity in the creation. When we look at the creation, we see how everything coming from a single source. So I guess that's the crux of the 22nd word. And for our new friends, so in my book this is 316, page 316. And we are studying the interpretation of these following verses. This is from the very beginning of the second station of the 22nd word. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. God is the creator of all things, and He is the guardian and disposer of all affairs. So He is the creator of all things without any exception, and He is the guardian and disposer of all affairs. Again, without any exception, because from Quran we know when He says kullu shay'in or kulli, everything, it means like without any exception. Another verse, to him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. to him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. So glory to him in whose hands is the sovereignty of all things, and to him will you all be brought back. And there is not a thing but its sources and treasures inexhaustible are with us. But we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. But we only sent down thereof in due and
ascertainable.
Thank you. Ascertainable measures. There is not a moving creature, but he has grasp of its forelock. Verily, it is my sustainer. That is on a straight path, but we said there's another translation make more sense. Verily, it is to my sustainer. The path to my sustainer is the straight path. That's another translation, maybe better translation of the same verse. So we've been studying these verses, and the author is, within his methodology and his style, interpreting these verses. And we will continue with the 10th flash, inshallah.
Okay, 22nd word, second station, 10th flash. Just as life, which displays a manifestation of divine beauty, is a proof of divine oneness and a sort of manifestation of unity. Death, too, which displays the manifestation of divine glory, is a proof of divine unity. Fascinating. So just life, which displays a manifestation of divine beauty, is a proof of divine oneness and a sort of manifestation of unity. So we can look at death also. Death too, which displays the manifestation of divine glory, is a proof of divine unity. For example, and God's is the highest similitude. By showing the sun's light and reflection, the bubbles on a wide flowing river, which sparkle in the sun, and transparent objects, which glisten on the face of the earth, testify to the sun. By showing the sun's light and reflection, the bubbles on a wide flowing river, which sparkle in the sun, and transparent objects, which glisten on the face of the earth, testify to the sun. On those tribes of bubbles and transparent objects disappearing, the continued magnificent manifestation of the sun and the uninterrupted and constant display of its light on the successive groups and tribes of bubbles and transparent objects which follow on after them, testify decisively that the little images of the sun and the lights and flashes which appear and sparkle, flare up and die away, and are changed and renewed, are the manifestations of an enduring, perpetual, elevated, single sun whose manifestation is undying. MashaAllah, what a long sentence. That is to say, just as through their appearance and becoming visible, the shining droplets demonstrate the sun's existence, so with their disappearance and extinction, they demonstrate its continuation, permanence, and unity. All right, so listen. So just as through their appearance and becoming visible, the shining droplets demonstrate the sun's existence, so with their disappearance and extinction, they demonstrate its continuation. So the sun's continuation, permanence, and unity. In exactly the same way, through their existence and lives, these flowing beings testify to the necessary existence and oneness of the necessarily existent one, and with their deaths and disappearance, they testify to his pre-eternity, everlastingness, and unity. Yes, the beautiful creatures and fine beings, which are renewed and restored within the decline and disappearance that occur through the alternation of night and day, winter and summer, and the centuries and ages, surely point to the existence, continuance, and unity of an elevated, eternal possessor of continually manifested beauty. While the deaths and disappearance of those beings, together with their apparent and lowly causes, the deaths and disappearance of those beings, together with their apparent and lowly causes, demonstrate that the causes are nothing but a mere veil. Causes are nothing but a mere veil. This situation proves decisively that these arts, these inscriptions, these manifestations are the constantly renewed arts. This situation proves decisively that these arts, these inscriptions, these manifestations are the constantly renewed arts, the changing inscriptions, the moving mirrors of an all-beauteous one of glory, all of whose names are sacred and beautiful, that they are his seals which follow on one after the other, and his stamps that are changed with wisdom. So that is the 10th flash. And let's see what I got from this. So he's, first of all, he's talking about all these previous flashes were mostly discussing about life and through life, how we observe the universe and how we interact with the universe. And we come to realize through life about the unity qualities of the one who is giving things and bringing things into existence. So through life, we are able to see the unity, that everything is coming from this source, right? And now he's saying, and so that was a proof of divine oneness. Now the author is saying, look at the creation of death also, which is also a proof of divine unity. So that's what the author wants to show in this 10th flash, that death is also, the creation of death is also a proof of divine unity, that it is also coming from that same source. So that therefore, it, as a consequence, the conclusion, it would be from the, that should also prove the divine unities. So then the example is given, and of course he's saying, first he makes sure that everybody understands by referencing the verse that, and God's is the highest similitude, that whatever analogy that the author is going to use, don't get lost in the, it has its limitations, so don't get lost in the analogy, but just see for what the point of the analogy is, and then relate that to something that is from the created world into something related to the one that cannot be part of the universe. So that's what God's definition should be understood as, that something that is not of the nature of the universe. So, and the example is about the sun as, as being the authority or being the source of the light, and then the reflection that it, displays on the various things. In the example, he's saying the bubbles on the flowing river, because river is a flowing thing. It's a constant change. It's not static or stable. It doesn't stay in one place, but it's something that flows. So this is how the sun's light, keeps shining on these little bubbles on the flowing river, and the objects, they get that light, and they, as the author puts it, they glisten on the face, so it testify to the sun. So the reflection on the bubbles testify that they are coming from some source, and that source is the sun. And then, of course, those bubbles go away, and the next flow in the flowing river of the set of bubbles come, and then they get the same light, and then they also testify to that. So what I'm still trying to understand is in the example, and this is where I'll need all of your, maybe some of you can help me here. So the ones that are flowed, they're gone, right? They are changed and renewed. So how, so he says those manifestation, so the manifestation, that shows that the sun's manifestation stays, always stays, it's undying. So no matter the one set of bubbles went through, the next set is there, which, and then that gets this manifestation of light, it gets the reflection, they go through, and then the next batch comes. So that shows that there is a constant continuous source, which is the sun in the example. And the ones that have gone away, they've manifested the light of the sun for some time, and then they've gone away. But the sun has always been there. So now then he concludes that just as through this appearance and becoming visible, the droplets demonstrate the sun's existence. So that's, I agree with. But with their disappearance and extinction, they demonstrate its continuation, permanence, and unity. So with the disappearance of the bubbles or the droplets, they demonstrate the continuation, permanence, and unity. So I would like to hear how you guys understand this particular conclusion from this example. And I will pause here.
Well, Jazakallah khair, awesome for the reading and your comment. So I guess your question is like the overall summary of this flash. So anyone has any idea how disappearance of bubbles in this example, how disappearance of the bubbles or waves on a river demonstrate or points to continuation, permanence, and unity of the Creator? Maybe more important here in this context is the continuation and permanence. I guess first we should understand this. Any ideas?
I think Faria has her hand up. She can go.
Assalamu alaikum. Beautiful analogy, really brought up by the author, really caught my attention. I mean, it's very simple to understand. Like before I was just reading it, I'm like, well, a lot of text, like Asim was saying, big sentence, but really the gist of it is, it's really drawing my attention to what I observe. Change is really obvious. It's all around us, right? We can just observe anything, like a leaf falling from the tree. Or even if you pick some flowers from the garden, a couple of days later, they wither away. But you're like, hey, guess what? There's more flowers in the garden. That's amazing. Cut them, a couple of days later, wither away. Or anything like a fruit hanging on a tree. You can empty out the whole tree. A couple of days later, you're like, wait a minute, there are fruits hanging in there again. And so we see constant creation around us. But the whole idea here, at least for me, what I gathered was the qualities that are reflected on these acts of creation is always there. So I know the author starts off by saying death is also a manifestation of divine glory and a proof of divine unity. And so just by pondering over this and looking into this analogy, like really extracting whatever I can from it, it makes me realize that death is not non-existence. Again, death is not going into annihilation. It can't be, because otherwise how do I explain the act of creation that I continuously see? Same qualities are manifested, endless, in infinite ways. And so, and really with the analogy, even bubbles come, bubbles go, even like, you know, when you're playing bubbles, little kids, you know, when you're blowing those bubbles, right? They're there for a couple of seconds and they go away, but hey, guess what? You can blow in more bubbles. But like, you know, they're shining. So the quality of shining is still there. So like, so there must be something that's reflecting the shiningness or the shining qualities in it. And Asim says, we observe death in our experiences and see new babies coming. So that shows the continuous act of creation. Definitely, yep. A very more practical and relatable example. So that was my immediate takeaway. But I know the specific question was more geared towards how does this demonstrate continuation, permanence, and unity of the source of existence? I mean, so from my immediate observation vicinity, I mean, I see it as such, but yeah, let's see what others have to say. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Any other comments or questions here among us? Please go ahead.
So the permanence part seems, I'm not going to say obvious, but easier. So I was thinking, how could it show unity? Like if I see bubbles disappearing that are reflecting the sun, and then once they go away, how does this show unity? But if I see that light is being reflected from these bubbles, and then everything I see, let's say all I see are bubbles or water at that moment, but all that water is disappearing, this light is being reflected, I know that the water can't be the source of it, so there is a source of this light. And I guess that's what it means by unity, that I know that there exists one source of this light, because these bubbles can't be sources of the light by themselves, so it expresses unity in that way.
And I guess the continuation and unity is somehow like inherently connected. So what will happen in creation, we observe the continuity. Like Abdurrahman is just in front of me. Oh, he's still in front of me. But there's a continuity. If I wait 10 minutes, you probably will be there. I hope so.
Maybe.
Yeah. So we observe continuities one way or another. So when we look at these bubbles on the river, there's a reflection of sun, there's a shining, a glittering, and it continues. So we observe continuity, and as author says, we cannot attribute this continuity to the bubbles because they're obviously disappearing. They die. And with every death comes the question how this continuity takes place in front of him. Because everything is dying, but there's still something which continues. The lights of sun or shining, the reflection, which takes my attention to the source. Because bubbles cannot be the source of this continuity, whatever continues to exist, the light in this example, I look at the, sorry?
They cannot sustain their own existence.
Yes, exactly. They cannot sustain their own existence. They cannot sustain the existence of the light that I observe. Thus, I have to look at the sun. Of course, like metaphorically speaking, otherwise you shouldn't look at the sun, right? It's harmful for your eyes. But yes, you need to look at the sun. You have to look at the sun. Otherwise, you cannot explain the continuity in front of your eyes, which takes you to the unity. Because when you concentrate on the bubbles, you see multiplicity there. Every bubble has its own light. Every bubble has its own tiny sun in them. And as they go away, as they die, you have no choice but attributing all this tiny sun to the real sign, the unity. I guess this is really important, especially like the permanence and continuation part. Because when I observe such a continuity, and when I observe that together with the continuity, I realize that the source is the continuous source. So there is a continuous creation in front of my eyes. Creation takes place every second that I observe. So the continuity I observe in the creation takes me to the continuity or permanence of the source. Thus, the change in the creation, the vast change in the creation, because everything changes, so fast and so, how to say, like fundamentally, nothing stays same. Everything loses its core, its identity every second. Everything about you changing, right? Every individual atom in you changing. So such a vast continuity also eliminates the possibility of all these explanations that we hear. Like the creator once created the universe, say at the time of Big Bang, and then everything takes place by themselves. So we don't need source of creation, source of existence, interfere with the universe. Right? This is the mechanical understanding of the universe. It works as a setup machine. But the author says this is not possible because everything changes, everything dies. So the continuity you observe in the creation cannot be attributed to the objects themselves. So the source of existence, source of creation, has to be put in the equation every single minute. So this is what I understand from permanence of source, continuation of the source. Any other comments or questions? Maybe disagreements?
I have a question. Since like this 10th flash talks about death, like, and separation, there is this like emotional aspect to it, right? So if you look at the subject from that perspective, like what is really the implications for human spirit? Like why is it important to really understand the permanence of the creator or the unity of the creator? What does it really, why does it really matter, like for, and what are the implications of it for human spirit? Like, okay, he's permanent, he is one, but what is, like, understanding that is okay and it's fine, but then what? Like, why is that important for me to know that?
To know about that or to know about the continuity?
To know about that, like he's, like, that is also an evidence for his unity. So what is the significance of that?
I'll just try and then you continue.
And then after you, Freya was raising her hand.
So let's approach this from your perspective. Let's come to the conclusion of permanence and unity from your perspective. So in your life, let's say you feel you're struggling, or you don't know how to solve something, or you need some light to come into your life, but there isn't. And all of a sudden this light comes, and then this solves a problem for you, and you feel relief from that. But then it dies. This life dies, and you're trying to somehow create it again, or find some relief again, but you can't do it. It's gone. But then somewhere this life comes again, or this light comes again, and relief comes, and you find a solution, or like it continues. And you see that the source isn't from yourself. You don't have the power to do it, but there is this permanent light that is shining on your life. This mercy, this love that is shining on your life. You can see that from your perspective. And then you see that since you can't attribute it anywhere, there is a unity behind it. And then you see that it's permanent in your life. It's always there. It's always taking care of you. And then from your perspective, you can find relief that there is a one that is, your sustainer. That's my initial thoughts.
So it becomes like a point of support for you to go on with your struggles in life.
Because your struggles actually show you that there's a light that is shining on you. It actually connects you with that. So you're unhappy for those struggles, because otherwise you're just living life in like this horizontal relationship, but But then because of these struggles that make you actually look up and see that vertical relationship or see that source, you find meaning in your life. It actually, you enjoy those struggles. You should, theoretically.
Feria, please go ahead if you still want to tell.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about, it makes very much sense that, everything is continuous. So this continuity is, I can even say it's permanent. This continuity that, as far as I'm concerned, whatever I observed, this continuation is permanent. And so it makes sense what the author is sharing, that, things disappearing, and new things coming in. It demonstrates the sun's continuation, permanence, and unity. So I'm trying to tie everything that we discussed thus far, whatever whatever has been shared right now, like continuation points to something permanent, and then that points to unity. So just curious to know, what does everybody understand from unity? As in, like, based on our practical experience or observation that we observe now. So yeah, I see continuation, and this continuation, this continuation is permanent, right? So now continuation is permanent, and from there that points to unity. Yeah, what do you guys think?
Okay, this is a question. Let's keep it in mind. Any attempts to answer this question, or any other comments, other questions?
So I think, again, based on an example, let's say you start business with someone, and down the road, the company that you're working with changes management. And then you have a trade with them, but the new people say that, well, the previous ones made the agreement with you, none of our business. Go and find them, get your money from them. I mean, this sort of you will get horribly annoyed, I guess, in such a case. So in my life, let's say I am bored, things are happening to me, and let's say 20 years down the road, somebody says, well, the management has changed. Sorry, we have another creator. So I guess human has this tendency, where's this life going to? So if my maker is beyond space and time, from my point of view, if the entire timeline is his manifestation, and it is the manifestation of the one and only, then this definitely gives me a comfort, saying that everything is under the control of the single management. It's not like, well, it was 20 years ago, our mind has changed. Even this shouldn't happen. Even if it is the same management, it shouldn't happen that, well, yesterday is yesterday, sort of a thing. So today is today. This is a famous political saying in Turkey: yesterday is yesterday, today is today. So it shouldn't happen like this. And I guess it gives a lot of frustration to human. But as I see that unity is not only space-wise there, but also slices of time are the manifestation of the same one and only, then it has a lot of practical ease in my life. It saves me from a lot of worries. But this is the practical implication. The author is looking from the other way around, saying that, look, you see that the manifestation among time is also showing that the source is one and only.
So do you think like the stress is coming from the fact that we tend to forget that, and we try to go after the reflection on the bubbles, on the water, and one after another trying to maintain or trying to catch that or fulfill that like desire of like permanence or security, and continuously going through that process actually brings in stress and depression in life because there is no end to it and you can really never catch up with it.
And I do not have security in it being outsourced, like the reflection being outsourced by an unending, undying source. But as if I am feeling like this reflection is what it is. It's not coming from a source which doesn't die. So I have this tendency to preserve it because it's dying moment by moment, and it gives me a lot of stress.
I'm experiencing this like lately at work, like there are a lot of issues going on, like a lot of quality issues, and it's like a firefighting like every day. Like, and it's not just one issue at a time, like it's like they all come together at the same time. And trying to like handle all of them because like everyone is priority. It's very draining. Like there's like you come to a point that like you are like, okay, I give up. I usually cannot control anything in this like workplace, and I'm just like surrendering myself. So like that continuation of the reflection can be reminding me that like I find myself oftentimes going after those glittering moments to control them or to maintain them, forgetting that I really have no true control over the things, which in return like it comes back to me as like overtiredness and distress.
Feria says something which is related to her question, I guess. She says, as in a source not of the nature of this universe is what unity refers to. That is, continuity points to that. Okay, so I guess she says when I look at the continuity, it points to a single source which is not of the nature of this universe, and this is the unity, she says. Okay, Jazakallah khair. So about what Yusuf and Osman said, so we have this feeling of insecurity in life, right? Most of the time, this is what people exploit, the insurance companies and so on. We have this feeling of insecurity because of feeling. I'm just trying to understand what you said. Through the feeling, because we want to keep things as they are, but everything's changing. So we need something which stays we need something which stays stable, which is stable. Thus, finding this permanent source has a practical influence in our life because it gives us the security that we are after. Is that so? Okay. I guess in a similar way, like in our life, every time, every period, we have something that we love, or multiple things that we love, but they do not stay same, they change. Like, just think about your childhood. Everything you loved at that time, they're gone away. Nothing is there anymore. All your childhood friends, they changed. Some of them, they don't even want to talk to you. Some of them, you don't want to talk to. So the friendship, for instance, you were experienced during your childhood, that you enjoyed, that you loved, left you, abandoned you. But interestingly, you find some other bubbles in your life, showing same friendship, the reflection of the friendship in different bubbles. You had your friends from your high school, and then they changed very quickly at that age. You changed, so they gone. You find other friends. After a point, you know, when you realize all these changes, all these, you know, coming to existence and then going from your life through death, going away from your life, you have this sense of security, kind of like, even my current friends, even if they abandon me, even if they leave me, I know that some other bubbles will come. So it's not the bubbles that I am after, but it's the light that they reflect. So when you attribute the friendship to your friends, you get crazy, you get so sad when thinking that they will leave you. But when you realize through all these experiences, all these changing friends in your life, when you realize there's something constant beyond all these changing friends, when you discover the friendship of your permanent creator, permanent Lord, and you say, okay, Abdurrahman can leave one day, some other person will come. Of course, he wouldn't be able to replace Abdurrahman.
I was going to say replace him.
But seriously, like, joke aside, when I enjoy something,
Some sort of stuff, right?
when I enjoy something, I quickly remind myself, I really try to practice this, especially when I enjoy something really much. I truly try to remind myself that, Birkan, don't think that the enjoyment that you are having right now is coming from him or her. You know, even if he dies, even if it dies, if it is an object, something a better will come. So it gives me, you know, more enjoyment. So I try to, you know, free myself from this insecurity, as Yusuf was saying. From the beginning, before, as author says, before they leave you, you should leave them. By thinking their death, by thinking, you know, the fact that they will die one day, it gives you, I don't know, like lightness. It gives you peace. The fact that the people will die, your loved ones will die, give you a strange peace when you take it with a right mind.
It looks like this, now that we come to the 10th flash, it's sort of completing the picture that was drawn so far, because so far the manifestation was on life. And now with death that is being manifested, it is showing that it spans, like, the source is absolute in terms of not only space. I mean, absolute definitely means space, not bounded by space and time, but for human perception. So now I am observing that, because there was this other insecurity in me, which was regarding my future, most importantly, because I'm going to die. What's going to happen to me? Now this is saying that even with death, which something is ugly, within this manifestation, it gives me such glad tidings of an eternal existence.
There's an interesting, important question from Ömer. He says, how do you know something better will be there? Referring to my sentence with comment. He says, do you mean for this world or after? So before I try to answer anyone else who has any answer, how do you know something better will come? Or maybe you can say, you know, you don't think something better will come.
From your own experience.
From your own experience.
As you were saying, like, the friends may change, but the notion of friendship is still there. That doesn't die.
I guess the emphasis in the question was with the word better. I said something better will come.
And you said that no one can replace Abdurrahman right after that, right? So.
And you also said it was a joke.
A better will come.
Or maybe if, okay, somebody raised it. Shall I?
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
After you, I can.
Okay, so then I would say, if let's say I am very much stuck with Abdurrahman and I overvalue his friendship, and he goes somewhere. If I am aware, if I am awake, his going away is better for me, because initially it's very upsetting. But within this going away, even if nobody else comes, there is this opportunity for awakening for me, which will remind me of, was it Abdurrahman? Because now that there's this emptiness in me, then there's this opportunity to question, is it really gone? Because the manifestation, I used to think that he is the source. But then now I can question, maybe it was not. So I guess this would be the actual better. But also in our practical life, the Creator sends somebody else. Maybe not Abdurrahman, but you buy a cat.
Or a dog.
Oh, no, exactly.
They're so shiny, so really nice one.
Like a sweet, cute cat. But then you realize that the same thing is manifesting on this cat as well in a different flavor. But I guess this ultimately best, in first question regarding your comments, the better should be reminding me of the source. Because otherwise, no matter how good of a friend comes, it will be worse for me if I don't realize the source. Even if the Prophet comes to me, and I see the Prophet as a best of men only, without his connection to the source, then it's not good for me. I might be the best friend of a man like Prophet, but I am seeing him as just a human, like as a flesh and bones, but a human of perfect character. But I don't see anything about what is being manifested in here is from an eternal source. Then is it really good to have such a friendship?
So through your experience of that, or losing your, let's say, friend, your state of mind becomes better. You make the attribution to the Creator, the source. And in such a state, what replaces your friend will become a better friend for you, because you will be able to extract more from him or her. Oh, Feria, please go ahead.
Before me, Asim had his hand up. So, Asim, go ahead, please.
No, you want to go ahead? You can talk. I was just going to comment about, this aspect that Osman brought up about the, the emotional side of death and all the comments that I'm hearing. So, the thing about in our lives, when we see, for example, in the example that the author is giving about the bubbles, you can witness it, that the light is shining on those bubbles. So, and then you can get to realize that, as the previous flashes were saying, that they are coming from the same source, which is what which showed that the unity of the manifestation, that everything, that all the light that is being reflected on the bubbles that I see are emanating from this one source, or the sun in the analogy. So in the same way, when, in the flowing river, so the bubbles that are going through, even their disappearance or their going away must be also questioned. And, as we were saying that, the bubbles themselves are not putting themselves away or, dying by themselves. But again, there's a source behind that, an agent that is also doing or responsible for that. And that also, the dying away also shows, again, the unity or aspect of the source, of the one who is bringing those manifestations into those bubbles. So just like everything was coming in the life, it shows the unity. So the death in the same way is also emanating from the same source, as how I'm understanding it. So that's why that any moment from my observation, I see the continuance or the permanence of, the reflection, manifestations, and that, that is the opportunity, at least for me as a conscious being, to realize, as Yusuf and some others said, about, getting to know what kind of source is this, or who this source is, that the source is a permanent one, a merciful one. That's why then death also becomes something that is, just another creation, just like, we get into that ease or that comfort feeling about, yes, because you realize that you belong to that particular source that is giving life and that is giving death, and, all that in between in your experience. So you belong to the one who is continuous in this, manifestation. So that is your perfect, understanding that will lead you to this, like a calm, soothing feeling that, yes, so no matter what, death does not become anything, because you know that it is how you attach yourself to this source of existence, that is the one who is the eternal one, the permanent one, from which everything is coming from. That's why the unity aspect is there. So that makes it much easier for you. That's what I wanted to share.
Oh, good point. That's interesting that you brought up about death, because now I'm thinking, because everything is continuously changing. So even with keeping that in mind, I mean, it's obvious, even death then becomes like, oh, it's just a change. An act of creation is a change in creation, right? So life and death then intertwine, or it's just the same thing at the end of the day, because it's of creation, it's sharing. Point. Yeah, what I wanted to share was the comment about something better will be brought. Yeah, because again, keeping the continuation in mind, the motion in mind, we are all evolving at different stages in our lives. And at one moment, something may seem good, right? Goes away. At another stage, something comes up, and then that may seem good, right? So if I were to compare, I mean, we shouldn't even be doing the comparison, but the whole better part, like at this point, this is better for me. The way I'm for myself understanding this is the analogy of we being students in this universe, right? So we're just learning, and yeah. So if I interact with an act of creation, this is better for me at this point. Yeah, so I mean, just looking into then better would really, to me, mean the meaning that I extract from the thing. So that would be better in that way. I don't know if that made sense, but that was what I took away from it. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Any other comments, any other questions regarding this few paragraphs that we read? Otherwise, we can continue with it in short and complete the 10th flash. While people are thinking, so if our online participants do not mind, I think we should finish, end today 15 minutes earlier, like 9:15 p.m., so that we will catch the Maghrib prayer. Otherwise, it will be late. So, inshallah. Any comments, any questions? Anything from this side? Faria, please go ahead.
Before we move on to in short, are we done with this paragraph? Because I had a question a little bit from the paragraph on page 313. Are we done with this, or we're moving, like we're saying more about it?
Please share your comments or questions.
Okay. Sure. So the way the paragraph ends just before the in short part, it says well, I'll just read the whole thing. The situation proves decisively that these arts, these inscriptions, these manifestations are the constantly renewed arts, the changing inscriptions, the moving mirrors of an all beauteous one of glory, all of whose names are sacred and beautiful, that they are his seals, which follow on one after the other, and his stems that are changed with wisdom. Yeah, I mean, again, the author is sort of bringing our attention to the motion, constant change. And so I was just curious and wondering, what is everyone's take on the word sacred? It's a, I mean, you know, pretty loaded word, but like, what does everyone understand from the word sacred here?
So I guess sacred in here is unlike anything that you can think of. Because we say merciful, but we are talking about a sacred mercy. It means it is, when we say mercy, you remember your mother's mercy, but we are talking about a sacred mercy. So do not imagine his mercy, but you can talk about manifestations of his mercy. So this is why I guess this sacred is important in there.
It's also could see it's clean, right? So it's clean from all your limitations. Yes.
Because in the next paragraph, the one that starts with in short, he's going to talk about names. So it's a question, what do they mean by names of Creator? So I guess this is why sacred, names being sacred is important here.
So then let's continue with in short, which, if, as you said, would also explain the question. Abdurrahman, would you like to read it for us?
In short, the mighty book of the universe both teaches us the creational signs concerning divine existence and unity, and it testifies to all the attributes of perfection, beauty, and glory of that all-glorious one. And they prove the perfection of the divine essence faultlessly and without defect. For it is obvious that perfection in a work points to the perfection of the act, which is the source and origin of the work. And the perfection of the act points to the perfection of the name, and the perfection of the name to the perfection of the attribute, and the perfection of the attribute to the perfection of the essential qualities, and the perfection of the qualities point necessarily and self-evidently to the perfection of the essence possessing those qualities. For example, the perfect inscriptions and adornments of a faultless palace indicate the perfection of a master builder's acts behind them, and the perfection of the acts show the perfection of that active master's titles and names, which demonstrate his rank, and the perfection of the names and titles show the perfection of the other attributes qualifying the master builder's art. And the perfection of the art and attributes show the perfection of the abilities and essential capacity of that craftsman, which are called the essential qualities. And the perfection of those essential qualities and abilities show the perfection of the master's essential nature. In exactly the same way, the faultless works observed in the world, which manifest the meaning of "Do you see any flaw?" Quran chapter 67, verse 3. Do you see any flaw? This art in the well-ordered beings of the universe point observedly to the perfect acts of an active possessor of power. And those perfect acts point clearly to the perfect names of a glorious agent. And that perfection necessarily points to and testifies to the perfect attributes of the beauteous one signified by the names. And certainly, those perfect attributes point and testify to the perfection of the perfect one qualified by the attributes. And those perfect qualities point with such absolute certainty to the perfect essence of the one possessing the qualities, that they indicate that all the sorts of perfection to be seen in the whole universe are but signs of his perfections, hints of his glory, and allusions to his beauty, and pale, weak shadows in relation to his perfection.
It's a tough part, I guess, although it sounds simple. So, would you like to help us? Is
I can ask questions.
That's even better.
So I guess this is now summarizing the 10 previous flashes. This, in short, doesn't seem to be a summary of the 10th flash only. It's partially related, but also it's a summary for the previous 10 flashes as well. So it says the mighty book of the universe is nothing but manifestation of names, attributes, all the way eventually to the divine essence, he said. So based on the text we have been studying for 10 flashes, more than 10 weeks. So what do we understand from names? To put it as a very blunt question. Because I think this is, from here, from this paragraph, maybe we can extract some methodology in terms of what they mean by, or what we shall think of when we say names or attributes of the Creator. Did Asim raise his hand?
Earlier I did about what Faria's question about, she was asking about sacred, so I wanted to add a little bit to that. You know, like, for example, in our experience, when we like something or we are happy with something, you know, we get some meaning out of it. So, for example, if you experience like somebody is treating you well, or, you know, one experiences the mercy part of it. So you want to hold on to that, for, you know, you want to keep that mercy, you don't want to lose that. So in that way, that particular quality of mercy becomes sacred for you, because it's something that you hold on dearly to, and you don't want to lose it. You want that for eternity. So the sacredness is something that is how much you realize it, and then how much you value it and you make it for yourself. So it's all has to do how you take it, and you know, you want to keep it or not. So the person who is interacting or who is experiencing, can make that sacred, because in its existence, everything is, if you understand it, is nothing but the qualities or that are being manifested. And the more we are realizing that, the more we are going to appreciate that, and the more they will become sacred to us, if we are really getting satisfaction and really appreciating they're leading us to that. This can only be the work of the one who is, you know, the eternal one, who is the absolute one, who is the most merciful one, the beauteous one, the generous one, and it goes on and on, continues.
I'll start. From names, what I understand is something that is independent of anything. Like if something has a name, that means it's independent. That's like the meaning that's coming to me right now.
Glass?
Right. But a glass is not independently a glass. So it actually does not hold that name. It doesn't have that name. I can't attribute that name to that glass.
So, author gave an example of like an artist. So, this was a metaphor that he applied it to the Creator as well. So when we see an art, then this perfection of art points to the perfection of names, so on and so forth, he said. So we use such concepts, let's say, for beings. A name, we give a name to our cat, or we give a name to your job. And he used this as an example for us to understand something that is unknown to us or unknowable to us, like from ghaib. So how does the two merge? Because when you said, I don't call it a name, but we do call it a name, right? It's the name of this object is glass, we say. It looks like the author is overloading some terminology in here, in a way. So the way that I call a name to this object, which is glass, is different than a name I call to the creator. This is why I guess he is making this transition. But what sort of a transition we are going to make with this paragraph? There was an example, but the example doesn't apply directly to the creator. What was the point?
The stages that you go through in your understanding of the creator.
Which means?
Which means, like, think of it as in, like, with the example of artist or an architect. Like, so there is this building here, and we don't really know the architect of this building, right? But like looking at the actual work of the individual, we can infer some sort of information at this level, some sort of like knowledge or information about the architect. And if you go with like, and that is the only thing that, like, as far as we are concerned, the architect of this building is guide for us, because we don't even know like when this building was built. Probably he's already or she's already there. So the only thing that is available is the building itself, the work itself. And that's what we are, like, in a way stuck with. But at the same time, this, especially I can speak of in the context of temp flash, because I don't know like the previous discussions I wasn't part of. Talks about like a unity, the one who is permanent and who is beyond my reach. So how are we supposed to get to know that? We said that like we look security and comfort, right? And that's only possible by understanding that like everything is transient here, and if everything is subject to change, and there must be a changer, and that changer must be permanent, and based on the like text here, it claims to be the most beauteous one. So how are we supposed to get to know him as the most beauteous one? The only thing that is available is the work itself. In the example, it is this building, and if you apply the example to the reality, it is the universe itself. So then you start like inferring like meanings from the word. And I'm not really sure now, like I'm just speculating. I guess like the names would be the first one that comes after work, that okay, if there is an art, that must refer to some sort of like maker who is an artist. So that's one of the names that you came up with, for example. And if that is the name of that maker, one of the name of that maker, then that maker must also have that kind of traits in his essence. So you can, I guess, like continue with that like understanding and like different level of understanding all the way to his essence, which is eventually it is like guide for you, and it is beyond your reach, and then you again you have to come back to the universe again.
So initially I am on Earth. So going with the water bubbles metaphor, to me the existence is the bubbles, and what is reflecting on the bubbles are names. The universe becomes a manifestation of names, to my initial perception. But then I realized that names are also sort of bubbles. If I step one step ahead, and I see that they are actually sort of a manifestation of attributes, so on and so forth, like this. These are stages of my perception, as you said, of the divine essence. From looking one angle, they seem to be the source, but from looking another angle, I realize that my perception of merciful is also a reflection. It's a projection of absolute. Because how hard I tell you or you tell me not to think about the merciful, how hard you tell me that his mercy is sacred, still I'm going to imagine some sort of a mercy. It's going to be a manifestation in my perception. So the aspect of this, it's going to be a manifestation. I don't know how to properly word it. But the mercy of the Creator, even I say the merciful, which is a name, divine name, which should be absolute. In all our definitions, we will use such words. But when it comes to practical life, it means something to me, which means it's a manifestation. It has a shape for me. Although in theory, it shouldn't have any shape or form, in my perception, it has a form.
And that is inevitable for as far as you are concerned.
Yes.
And that is the reason why when you say tasbih or glorification, and here I realize that like he emphasized on the perfection a lot. And when so when you glorify God or when you tasbih God, like technically it's like a reminder to yourself that whatever you imagine him to be is that he's not. And which like eventually that what it really means is just like for you there's no way to reach his essence. And anything that anything that you imagine him to be is beyond your imagination, so he's unimaginable. And that's what the essence of tasbih or glorification is.
Yes. And this is why at the end of this journey, which you realize that it's an unending journey, you would say, glory be to you. Whatever we know about you you are beyond that. Like at the end of Miraj, what Rasulullah said was, Subhanaka ma'arafnak haqqa ma'arifatik. So glory be to you. We couldn't know you as you are. It also means we could never know you as you are anyways. Such a realization marks the end of Miraj, which also means it's an unending journey. Right? When we say end of Miraj, meaning that there's no end for it at the same time.
This journey, I guess, important from another aspect as well. So going with Osman example, for instance, the artist. So you see the artwork, you know that it's a product of the artistic creation, the action. And then you come up with the name, the artist. And then you talk about his or her traits. And so on, like it continues to until the essence. But I guess the reason it is important going through all these levels is, so in our example, for instance, which is just an example, again, like we shouldn't make any direct attribution to creator, but in our example, for instance, when we see the artwork and when we reach the essential qualities, saying that whoever did this artwork must have some sort of capacity to have this artistic creation, to artistic attributes. So it must be someone with for instance, it must be a conscious being. Because the artistic attributes requires the perception of the environment, requires the understanding of what is around, and then making a connection with them. So you know that he must be a conscious being. He must have this connection with the reality. And then finally you can even say that like he must be a human being. for instance, right? When you see when you reach his essence, all these essential qualities points to a human essence, you say, for instance. So this, he's being a conscious being, he's being a human being, the artist and the artwork, facilitates, makes it possible for you to make a connection with him. So the artwork take you to a point where you realize that you are not alone. There is someone that you can communicate with, that you can make a connection with. So the same way when we experience the creation, you can just look around and say that, oh, everything is so beautiful, yeah, and then lay down, enjoy the beauty. Or you can take the journey and realize that there is someone who is conscious of you. There is someone who takes care of you. There is someone that you can communicate with from this beauty, which makes your life, I guess I don't have to say, but it makes your life much richer. And it's not just, you're not just talking about the creator, but you're talking about a conscious creator. Again, like consciousness, like from my perspective, to the extent I know of my own consciousness, I'm just making a resemblance there. That my creator can speak to my consciousness as well. When you talk about his essential qualities, when you talk about his essence, as a journey. So instead of just enjoying the beauty, now you are talking about someone who loves you. So this is what this journey takes you.
That's really kind of way to feel that like existential void that like human spirit feels, because like nothing in this universe like in itself like really satisfied like human spirit, and like you always, I guess that's the reason why you always like go after things like the glittering, like shiny,
Changing stuff.
yeah, like objects, like reflections, because you want to constantly fill that like void, that like you want to experience the fulfillment, and you want to how should I say, have that satisfaction. But like together with that, like you are created in a state, like especially the human spirit, that the more you go after it, like the thirstier you get in a way. I think there's a verse like that: the more you drink, the more you will feel thirstier.
Oh, it's about the hell.
Yeah, but like you can experience that hellish state.
Yes.
And that's what you like in a sense, like that's what we all do, like in heedlessness.
You were reading before, which I maybe remember you mentioned before, constant constant changing creates spark, to creates wonder to examine or to ask the question why this is happening. So, and with this way you're asking, you can see the source of the creator, and then when you see the source of the creator, and you're saying how's this connection works. So, and then you start examining, saying, okay, we have a building, so that means there should be a maker. If there's a maker, and then there is a art behind that, it should be like some art engineering behind that. So, with this connection to lead to you, basically, this is what I understand, like as a summary. Okay, so we should have that change to recognize that something happening, and then something shining, and then goes back, and then another shining, and then you're asking, it gets it got your attention, and then you look at it, and then you're asking the question, why this is happening? So, and then you start this. This is later says well-ordered act. It's like
well-ordered
act. So we have to follow that steps to reach the creator.
I guess with this last part, he emphasizes that
you will never reach him.
Yeah.
So it's like an unending journey. And to what extent you say, I know him, it would be a manifestation. It would be another bubble.
Yeah.
So, and this to encourage the journey. Like, keep going with the journey.
So I guess when you start with like you cannot reach him, it sounds a negative, something like you are blocked and you are doomed. I guess we should put more emphasis on the perfection, like rather than maybe it is true like practically like you cannot know, but rather if we say that that this journey takes you to the perfection in every step, then it becomes something positive that you go after.
So let's say my understanding of mercy today is better or more perfect than my perception of mercy yesterday. So I am going in terms of understanding perfection of mercy.
Mm-hmm.
But each understanding of mercy inherently is a limitation. This is why I should say his is a sacred mercy. So which opens up, as you were saying, a richer journey in front of me, saying that, okay, there is more for you to enjoy, but at each and every step, there's going to be something more. So keep going. And he is the absolute mercy. So if we would like to speak like theoretical definition, he is beyond all of that.
And this journey, like from work to the action, from action to name and so on, like this sounds very, I don't know, like a technical, or this sounds very like out of nowhere why he's talking about this, like we don't do such stuff. But in reality, we do such, like we take such journeys, like short ones at least, like in our life. For instance, when we see an artifact, we say that, oh, it's not a natural thing, it's a human-made. This is the journey that we take. You look at the artifact, you say that, oh, it must be done in this way. Such an action requires such a, the quality name. Such a name requires such a, the attributes and so on. Such attributes can be only in such a being which has such capacities. And such being has to have such an essence of, humanity. Therefore, we say, oh, this is a human artifact. We take such journeys all the time. We see something in front of us and we make conclusions about it. It must be coming from, Yusuf's house. How do you know that? Because you take this journey. Because it's a horizontal journey, it's quicker, maybe.
That's how the human minds work.
Exactly. Like this is not something, just a technical that, introduced us out of nowhere. This is the way we interact with things. At least this is the way that we can interact with this. Otherwise, we can just take the artifact and just play with it and then broken.
How we learn.
Yes. There's one comment from Sohail, and he says, and God is the highest similitude. Great emphasis. I guess this is also related to what Yusuf said.
I don't understand what we read today. That's my question. No, because
you don't understand anything at all.
I understood some things, like how we can go from a doer to one that does a name, but here he's like splitting into like 5 or 6 different steps, and I don't understand how you can I see a flower, let's say, or like going by his example, I see a palace indicates like this is an act which indicates a master builder, and a master builder indicates the name and title, and then he goes like to qualities and essential qualities, and then essential nature. Like, do you understand anything how these layers are separated, or is that just a future discussion topic? Because I didn't understand how they're separated.
I guess his example was practically in terms of that. Let's say you have this glass over here, and which is an artifact, right? And then, since it's done, there's this notion of as long as there's action, then there is going to be some doer. But now you're trying to find about this doer. It's totally unknown. What made this? It cannot happen by itself.
Okay.
So then you say, okay, there seems to be
Manufacturing process.
some sort of, yeah, let's say this glass manufacturing technology is here. So you see the technology first of all. Then you say this technology requires knowledge and engineering. So then you say, okay, this knowledge requires a title like an engineering or an engineer title is required. And then you say this title cannot be a good fit for, I don't know, a dog, let's say. So then you go to,
This title can't be what?
can be a good fit for a dog. You haven't seen an engineer dog. So you say an essence for this title would be like a human at the end when he came to the essence. I mean, he counted more steps, and I'm finding hard time myself to separating all of them. But I guess in his example, it was clarifying how we do it in everyday life as well.
Okay.
Right?
So when you say this is a human-made object, this is the journey you take. Like it's not written, it's human-made, right?
Yeah.
How do you know it's human-made? Because you have a model in your mind. You say that, it requires such a manufacturing process. Such a manufacturing process, like an action, requires the manufacturer or engineer, and then name. So then you reach these attribute, like being the engineer, like having these mathematical skills, having these computational skills.
So I guess maybe we do this more in crime movies. It might help more. Because in there is a dead body, and then based on how the death occurs, we automatically discard the idea of it happened by itself. Like if the guy is like looking at the crime scene, so you start extracting some information about how it might have happened. Then you say, okay, this is first of all not random. Then you say, okay, it looks like there seems to be some sort of a will involved in here. Somebody willingly did this. Then you say certain technology is used because of the way that the bullet entered. It looks like the guy really wanted to kill, and he knows what part of the body kills, whatever. I mean, all these things, eventually, among the people that can do this, you narrow it down to 3 people. By the end of the movie, hopefully 1 person. And I guess this process is something that we keep doing, and the author is explicitly opening it up for us and saying that this is what the existence is showing to us. And these are the stages, steps we follow to arrive to the divine essence.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة